We have lots of good information to share with you today. This is information that may impact you today, tomorrow, or in the future, so don't touch that remote. Stay tuned for AARP, Real Possibilities. Dementia, it's impacting everyone. Either you know someone with dementia, or you're going to know someone with dementia, or you may end up having dementia yourself. So we're going to spend a little time today talking with someone whose entire career just about has been in the field of dementia. Dr. Michael Shafer, thank you so much for being with us today. You and I met, and I think the first time we met, we probably talked for I don't know how many hours, just about caregivers and dementia and everything that's going on. But before we get into that, tell us a little bit about you. And this has been your life's work. You are passionate about it. You go into communities, you're talking about it. How'd you get started?
You know, it's a great question. I don't always know like when that happened, but I know for sure when I was in school, when I was in graduate school, taking a first course on neuroanatomy, and I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, this is really, really fascinating to me. And maybe before that, I was heavily interested in pediatrics and thinking about research in that area. But the minute I had this exposure to that, and from there, it's just been like a whirlwind, right? Why do brains that are healthy do what they do? Mm-hmm. Why are brains, some of our brains, why do they not work well? Mm-hmm. Why do some people have conditions, genetic predispositions for, let's say, dementia, but never develop dementia? Mm-hmm. Why does that happen? What about modifiable behaviors? And so to me, every day, working in the hospital, working in whatever environment, I'm just fascinated by how brains work.
And so you can be predisposed to dementia but never get dementia.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And I don't know the number, I'm sure I'm pretty close, but there's a significant percentage of individuals who will have genetic predispositions but never develop it. A dementia process. And again, if you think about the most prevalent condition being Alzheimer's disease, and that's really powerful if you ask me, because modifiable means there's control. And so if we think about getting a diagnosis, it is a lot to deal with. And the first question I hear, well, should I, if I'm the daughter or the son, like, oh, should I watch out? Of course. Having a first generation person in your family increases the likelihood that you'll develop a dementia condition, but it doesn't mean you're going to. And so there's a ton that we can do. And so to me, that's fascinating.
When you say there's a ton that we can do, that works both ways. If someone said that you're, to test, Paula, you're predisposed, I'm going to worry about that. I'll probably bring dementia on myself, worrying about whether or not I'm going to get dementia or when or what's going to happen. Yeah. But yet there's something you can do. Talk about that.
Yeah, I think there's more and more research, particularly out of the area of longevity, right? Peter Attia, as an example, is pretty well known in this space. Huberman and his podcast, they're talking about these things, about how do we improve our lifestyle? How do we improve the things we do? So if one were to think about maybe 2 or 3 domains to really be emphasizing, I think the point of modifiable conditions is to think about exercise, nutrition, and our sleep. And can we do things early on? So as an example, if we think about medical comorbidity, if we can do our best to reduce blood sugar fluctuations, if we can do our best to reduce the likelihood of getting diabetes. And if you think about in this country that half the individuals, I'm pretty sure that number is correct, 50% of people with diabetes don't even know it. So if we can do things that modify the potential for developing a condition like this, that we should be all in on that. And that should be early on. Kids learning about why don't we drink soda, or why do we do it sparingly? Why should I care about eating proteins? Why should I care about that? And so that modifiable feature to me is super interesting.
It seems as though we're hearing more about dementia today than we were when I was a child. I know parents used to say, or grandparents used to say, so-and-so is slipping a little bit, Aunt Sally's slipping a little bit or something.
Senile.
Yeah, senile or just getting old. Was that dementia, was that Alzheimer's then as well? But it seems like it's more prevalent today. More people are talking about it.
Yeah, so I think that there are probably a bunch of reasons that account for that. One is just medical sophistication. The same is probably said for ADHD. Probably when I was a kid, everyone had ADHD and no one was treated with medications. And now you see this conversation about, are we doing it too much? So why? Did more people become autistic than 60 years ago? Like, what's the difference? So to some extent, maybe sophistication of how we identify these things is accounting for it. But there are probably other reasons too. And one of those reasons, right, is just the number of individuals who are living longer in this country. And if you look at data, speculation, and projections, I think 100 million individuals by the year 2050 will be 62 years or older in this country. So just in this country, if you think about the target date of when dementias start to creep up, in, let's say that's 65 to 72, just to make a kind of nice, easy number, we're going to see a third of this country at that age group. So, of course, the prevalence rates, right, they're going to rise. So we're going to see, we're more sophisticated at finding it, we're getting older. I think also our health behaviors are not so great and sort of maybe negatively influencing that.
There's a lot to unpack there. You know, Michigan is one of the fastest aging states in the nation. And so for us, we may see more of more dementia or more the prevalence of dementia than a lot of other places. And I'm not certain that our health system is ready for it. And so that leads me into talking about caregivers and those who take care of people with dementia, which I know is a passion of yours as well. There's a lot there.
Yeah, I tell you, it really is a passion of mine. And it comes from this idea of thinking like, how can you genuinely help people? So when I first started thinking about those processes, I was probably more interested in a national dialogue, which was maybe how does one raise funding that will ultimately go to, let's say, institutions like the Alzheimer's Association, which then distributes funds to national researchers. How do we develop medications? How do we assist with that? And I did that for a long time, participated on national endeavors for that. And I think as I ended that, I just thought, like, how does that help somebody I know? And I think as you age a tiny bit, by the way, you start to think a little bit more locally. And I will just tell you this powerful experience that we've had doing this. So when I was raising funds, again, thinking about a vehicle that's maybe a more national narrative, I was able to raise funds, and that was easy. And then I shifted to a community-based effort, and then it was significantly easier. And the reason I think that is because when you talk to people about where they live, it hits them in an emotional place that is so powerful that everybody can understand. So yes, I have been just genuinely interested, since I was an early kid. This comes from my parents and how they raised us to care about what other people needed or didn't need, and then gets translated into this foundation that my wife and I started. And then, again, very powerful experience because it's just an idea. And also, who do I think I am that I can start a foundation? Also, I think a little bit of narcissism there of like, oh, it's easy, just do it. And come to find out, oh, wow, it's really hard. Fill out the paperwork. I mean, it's to start a nonprofit. But what really struck me was talking and reaching out to people. So one of the first things you have to do when you develop a foundation is you have to align yourself with people. So you have to ask yourself, who do you even align yourself with? So do you do that with other specialists? Do you do that with, who do you do that with? So we start to think about how to diversify that effort. And we would reach out to people like, let's say Mick Graywell, and who's a local lawyer. And I remember talking to him, and it wasn't even 45 seconds, and he's like, I'll do it. He doesn't even work in the Alzheimer's space.
So people care about this.
People care, and it's about how to give to your community, and that's what he said. Or my friends over at Sinus Dramus, who just said, we're not in that business, but we're in the community business, right? We have a great deal of support from, and these board members, they just started One of our board members, Jack Wires, he's a lawyer too. Seems like a lot of the law groups, but he was like, yeah, we want to participate in
So
that.
does that get back to the caregiver somehow, through your foundation? And I know that you have started a memory cafe as well, and you're looking at replicating those throughout the state.
Yeah.
And there's a component of that deals directly with the caregiver as well as the patient with dementia.
Yeah.
And I can remember our volunteers being so impressed when you shared with them that at some point you might even want to get a van or some kind of car share service to go into underrepresented communities to make certain they can also participate
Yeah.
in a memory cafe, whether it's in Lansing or Detroit or Grand Rapids or where it might be.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of enthusiasm around that.
There's so much. And can I just say this, that like, again, where I work at Sparrow Hospital, University of Michigan Health, Sparrow, I mentioned this to the new system president who was just new. I had just met her, and in a conversation we were talking about wellness, and I mentioned that Sparrow has a mobile bus and how I would be willing, and my foundation would be willing to support those endeavors. And it was immediate that she was like, that's fantastic. Let's do that. Let's see how Sparrow can influence the community. And so think about like how powerful that is. And I love that because it doesn't take much to get somebody excited about how to help our neighbors.
So when you get this influx of support, what are you going to do with it? How is that going to help my next door neighbor who's taking care, or how's it going to help the general public?
I tell you, this is almost the trickiest thing about starting a foundation. It's almost just easier to raise money than it is to really find out in an effective, judicial way, how do you provide programs? So we have slowly but surely done that. So we have a mission, which is to think about that endeavor in three ways. How do we help support what exists, which will speak to why we partnered with the AARP to take on and help to expand, I think, an absolute fantastic endeavor of a memory cafe. Then two, how do we create our own things? And then three, how do we provide more information? And to me, the central piece, at least when we started, was how do we demystify dementias? People hear this word a lot and they think, oh my gosh, and we use it a lot incorrectly. So saying, well, I have dementia, my mom has dementia, my grandma had dementia. Okay, but there are lots of forms of dementia, right? So pretty important, I think, before we get to the idea about like how do we help caregivers, we have to think, what do we know we're dealing with? So diagnostically, that's why it's important to work with primary care or work with neurology, work with a neuropsych person to get those data points. And there are some emerging biomarkers that we can use, right, that tell us definitively that looks like Alzheimer's disease as an example. But how do we help caregivers? And why the focus on caregivers, right? Caregivers, to me, are these unsung heroes, right? I tease that, like, you see a commercial for a pharmaceutical agent that helps Alzheimer's disease, and the person's in the garden. And what you never see is the 14 people behind them, like, helping,
Right.
and then handing them the thing or whatever. And it's because that's the uncelebrated experience, right? It's just the either assumed or, but so to me, it seemed there was a void there. How do we help the caregiver? How do we, and why would we want to? So why does the caregiver need help is a really important question. If you look at data on caregivers, to which, again, think about the number we just talked about, the expansion of individuals who will be diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. In the United States, if we're around 7 million, now imagine 200 and, by the year 2050, the expansion of that condition, who's taking care of them? Okay, so now we have families doing that. And so now what you have more than ever in life, right, are people who are taking care of their parents. And then who else are they taking care of? Their kids. So they're sandwiched, right? They use that language a lot. They're sandwiched. So they've got this, they've got that. And so then what do we know about that person? Well, we know for sure that person's likelihood of like being depressed is way higher than, let's say, a same-aged person who doesn't have that. The likelihood that they're going to have medical conditions like hypertension, the rates at the same age are like double. Again, pretty close, I bet, on that rate. So we know for sure health conditions are more prevalent amongst individuals who just care for someone. And then when you look at something like dementia and the demanding nature of dementias, Alzheimer's disease being the most prevalent, we know that those individuals don't go to Pilates, they don't go to yoga, they're not outside running as much, they're not even getting to their own primary care physicians as much. So the question becomes, how does one help to abate that problem? How do we potentially fill like a small void? So that's what our foundation.
That's wonderful, and making certain that you connect them with the resources that are available. And what we've learned also at AARP is that you don't have to do it alone. You really do need a team of people around you. And the more people share their stories, come together and share what they're going through, they don't feel like they're an island all by themselves, unto themselves.
It's totally true. If you think about data just on socialization and the impact that socializing 1 hour a week has not only has on a healthy brain,
Right.
but a person who has neurocognitive disease, let's say Parkinson's disease with some dementia, mild cognitive impairments, whatever, the idea that just socializing for 1 hour a week and interacting with humans can help slow those processes down or create a positive benefit for you, that's amazing.
Is that the best treatment? Or are there medicines? Because we've read that medicines don't necessarily help. Medication doesn't really help. If you've been diagnosed with Alzheimer's or some sort of dementia, there are some medicines that can be taken, but they don't necessarily make a difference.
Yeah, I think it depends on what your specific aim is. Let's say you're worried about behavior and mood, agitation as an example. Let's say in a more advanced case of dementia, regardless of the etiology, I think then there are medications that work pretty well. I think what you're speaking to is the national concern, which is, let's say, the medications that are the most common, let's say Aricept, the choline esterase inhibitors, or let's say Namenda. Are they blockbusters, right? Are they working for everyone? And the answer is no. I think in part what that speaks to is how the dementias are different and the pathophysiology, what's contributing is different. But let's say that they're just focused on Alzheimer's disease. And so then the question is, why don't they work for Alzheimer's disease? And then I think that speaks to the complexity of the condition itself. And more recently, right, we've heard about the monoclonal therapies, but we also know that there's a great deal of drawback. So you might see national data, I'm making this up, but like, oh, there's a 16 to 30% level of improvement. Improvement from what? So I don't know. Does that mean that does that somehow affect, like, or specifically address, like, where were you before all of that, right? Were you superior? Were you average? Were you below average? Like, who are they? How is that really being quantified? But then there's also caveats with those medications, which is that there's micro-tearing and that there are, and so the idea that we think amyloid betas are at least associated in part with this condition, we think pretty heavily. And then the tau proteins, right? So these two proteins, the idea was that, like, could we clean them out? And then would they be fine? And I don't think it's a home run, just absolute yes. And so it leads those researchers down the path to think, so just as an example, maybe it's the creation of the protein clumping that's the problem, or the breakdown. So I think that there's a lot of work in that area.
We've got about a minute left. Future, any hope for being able to cure Alzheimer's or any type of dementia? We've got about a minute left.
To me, the biggest focus really is to let the researchers do their work and to let the medicine groups really continue down those paths while we simultaneously really support our community and help the people who are fighting these conditions and living with it day in and day out.
And make certain that people know they can help themselves by exercise, diet, sleep.
Absolutely.
And continue to socialize, right? Don't hide if someone has dementia in your family, or don't hide them. Just come out 1 hour a week, talk to someone, but don't,
And interact with peers and socialize, right? You find somebody else who's going through this, either as a caregiver, what are you doing? Or letting dad talk to someone else, right? That powerful human experience cannot be underestimated, in my opinion.
It's better than any medicine, isn't it?
It really can be.
Yeah, we appreciate you and all that you're doing and continue to do on behalf of all the caregivers and those who are diagnosed with some type of dementia. Thank you so much, Dr. Shafer. We look forward to continue to work with you.
It's
You're
really
gonna make a difference.
Yeah, thank you. It's our pleasure for sure.
You probably have heard the word elder law or elder law attorney. Why do you need one? David's here to tell us why. Hi, David.
How are we doing? So, one of my pet peeves is this elder law thing, because it sounds terrible. Oh, I'm elderly, so I need an elder law attorney. Really, the way to think about it is retirement law, because it's mostly for folks who are retired. And there are certain issues that you have now that you didn't have during your working life. The elder law attorney, the retirement law attorney is what I would call it, is all about making sure that what you've earned over the last 40, 50, 60 years doesn't evaporate, that the good work that you've done over the course of your working life bears fruit throughout retirement. Everyone thinks it's about death and taxes and what have you. It's really more about your life now. So we focus on you. Now, it's not like we forget the kids. Obviously, we've got to make sure that we avoid probate, save taxes, get it to the kids. Yes, we're going to do that. But the primary focus of retirement law, elder law if you want to call it that, the primary focus is you. The biggest threat to middle-class folks when they retire is not running out of money. It's not taxes and it's not probate. The biggest threat is long-term care. The government says that 70% of us will need, on average, 3 years of long-term care. How are you going to pay for that? That's what retirement law answers. You've already paid for it is the answer. With every paycheck, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, you've already paid for it. The question is, how do we make sure that you get what you've earned without going broke?
Thank you so much for that, David.
Thank you.
Dr. June, I've heard someone say that the older you get, you should actually gain a little weight. Is that true?
That's an interesting thing. So yes is the short answer. And the long answer is it depends on what your weight is by the time you get to your 60s.
Okay.
If you happen to be relatively thin or at target weight after the age of 65, gaining a pound or two a year as you get older is actually considered healthy and a sign that you're going to live a longer life, as opposed to becoming more and more frail as we get older. That being said, we have a lot of people who are getting to that aging process, and they are a little bit larger than they probably is healthy for them. You got to understand, though, that weight loss management or weight gain management, which is a thing, has to be tailored to the patient because everyone's going to be different, which means that that relationship you have with your nutritionist and your GYN and your PCP is extremely important to find out what weight management program, if any, is correct for you.
And so as you talk about weight, what's the impact of gaining weight on your pain or bone health? If you have knee problems or hip problems, then you're gaining.
And that's the caveat that makes this such an interesting question. As you gain weight, bone density goes up and actually lowers your chances of fractures. However, hypertension, cardiovascular disease, and sometimes even liver kidney problems can get worse with massive weight gain, especially as we're getting older and not moving around as much. On the other end of that, if you lose a lot of weight as we get older, your reserves for sickness also are lost with that too, and your ability, or you're unfortunate, you could break a bone a little bit more easily if you are below what is considered ideal weight.
So there's something called healthy weight. I'm going to try to gain some of that.
There is a definitely healthy overweight. And again, talk to your primary care.
Appreciate you. Thank you, Dr. June.
CATA's regional mobility solutions can help seniors seize the day. Hear what riders and community leaders have to say about the value CATA brings to the lives of aging adults.
My name is Barbara J. Robertson. I've been riding CATA ever since 1988. Basically, it's for going to the doctors in the grocery store, and if I have to go to places of church or something like that. Usually, I try to come on first Sunday because that's communion on first Sunday, and I ride Spectran to come here for that. I take it with my goddaughter, so me and her boyfriend, we ride to Walmart together, or we go to Meyer in East Lansing when she goes to the doctors and stuff like that. And I have other people, I have friends in the building that takes CATA. I'm glad they got Spectran because a lot of people don't drive. They can't drive like me. Spectran is the only way I can get around, basically. I have friends and family that do have cars, but I depend on more on CATA. I know a lot of Spectran drivers. They've been knowing me for years, and I mean, I love it. This young man here, he was really patient, really nice, and everything. Yeah, it would be very, very frustrating without CATA, because, I mean, if we didn't have CATA, you know, the people that needs CATA, they would be in really bad shape, because it's, you know, how can we get around without CATA? It's really helpful to the community. It helps the elderly. It helps the handicapped people and the blind people, disabled. So it's really helpful, because it helps me, and I'm disabled myself. It's very convenient. If you don't have a ride, call CATA.
If there was no CATA, we would have a very big problem, because we both have physical disabilities, so we can't walk like really long distances.
If we didn't have CATA, I don't know what we would do.
Hello, I'm Tracy with Impart Alliance at Michigan State University. Today I'm joined by Dan and Jennifer Digman. Both Dan and Jennifer live with MS and all of its challenges, and we're here to talk about how direct care impacts your lives.
I would say since the moment Dan and I married, our marriage was possible because direct care. We're fortunate that we have someone that's with us 7 hours a day, and Jen, my caregiver at this time, can help with activities of daily living.
And I think that helps incredibly, because then I can continue working full time, so that I go to work and then she has somebody there to help her. So then that puts my mind at ease, and it just really makes things more possible for us.
Absolutely. And I would imagine that opens up the door as well for your advocacy work around MS in general.
It does that, and not only that, just our day-to-day existence. If we want to go out in the community, if I want to go grocery shopping, if I want to go to church, and Dan and I remain active and part of the community.
I think that's what's so important then too, with the caregiving throughout the day. Then when I get done with work at night, I don't have to go to the store or cook or anything. Not that I'm against cooking and shopping, but it's just that makes life a lot easier. So then at night I can focus on taking care of Jennifer and living life.
Absolutely, because after 5 o'clock, you're suddenly in the role of direct care worker.
Absolutely, and so that really helps me just through the day to have that, so I'm not burned out with that. So.
Well, thank you both for joining us. To learn more about direct care, visit impartalliance.msu.edu.
Earthquakes, floods, hurricanes, tornadoes, and wildfires are all events you can't control, but you can be prepared for emergencies like these before they happen. Learn how you can be ready if a disaster strikes by visiting the link on your screen. Thank you for watching AARP Real Possibilities. If you want more information on the Foundation, on programming, resources, and what's available in your community, please visit the website on the screen. There's something that can be done, and you need to visit that website, share it with other people, and make certain that you get the information that will help make a difference in your life. Hopefully this is news that you can use. Thanks for watching.